Radio Space. Berlin News in English.
Hello and welcome to Radio Spakoff. We are recording live from Mobile Kino's Lakeside Film Festival, as we have done for years and years and years. I think our first ever live recording was done at this festival. The date today is August 6th and or 5th. Somebody help me.
6th.
It's August 6th, and this is the news from Berlin with Radio Spakoff. Everybody clap now.
Thank you, Dan. I'm Joel Dullroy with you, and also joining us today as co-host, we have the wonderful Ben Knight. Hi, Ben.
Hello.
Welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show. Regular voice.
It's nice to be introduced as co-host. That makes me feel really special.
Yeah, you've been upgraded.
Yeah.
Are you ready for this responsibility?
I don't know. We'll have to see.
Ben is here
If I'm
because
ready.
his film screened last night here at the Lakeside Film Festival, and we will talk about his film a little bit in the back half of the show after we've gotten through some news. And this festival so far, well, it's been a bit of a rain out for the last
It's been a
12
rain
hours.
in.
Rain in.
Yeah.
The first night and day, we had nice weather and everything was very, very pleasant. And then last night, just as the film started, the downpour began.
Oh,
But
the sprinkle lightened our mood. Splashed water on our faces. I would like to say that I arrived with the storm. I experienced none of the sun, and I soaked in every drop with pleasure. I'm not on ecstasy.
Well, I can say that for me, it really enhanced the experience and enhanced the film that I showed.
Yes, that's true. Like, I feel like your film, which confronts the climate catastrophe and our emotional response to it, is sort of enhanced by I like that, underneath us is like grass, which is clearly parched and damaged from the first half of the summer. And then it's just covered in these puddles from too much rain at this point.
Yeah.
And it really, it's like things are, especially if you've, like I've said, been coming out here for a decade, you can tell that this is not the weather we've had.
Yeah.
We have, but not all at once.
If you do recall, last year it was complete opposite. We'd had a whole drought of a summer, and everything out here was yellow, and like the trees looked like they were dead. So at least it's a bit greener out here. I'm not complaining at all about the rain. I think it's wonderful.
Oh, it really sounded like you were complaining.
Oh no, it's fine.
It came across that as that.
I'm not complaining either. I had a great time.
Yeah. Should we start by talking about your film?
I thought we were doing the news first.
Yeah, I know, but it feels more
let's do some
organic.
news and then get back into the.
Okay.
So let's.
Okay.
All right. So I'm a statistic. I have become a statistic of the many extra bikes that are getting stolen around the city lately. Bike thefts are up quite a lot this year, including 3 from me personally. I had 3 bikes stolen in a row. Bought one, stolen, claimed it on insurance. Bought another one, got stolen, claimed it on insurance. Bought another one, my insurance cancelled.
Okay.
I've heard this happen before, that if you have too many bike thefts, the insurance companies don't want you as a customer anymore. Fair enough.
Has bike theft fraud gone up? Do we have that statistic? Because it feels like, Joel, I mean, I'm not accusing you personally.
Yeah, blame the victim.
Is the theft? Where's the reporting of these statistics coming from? Is it police reporting? Or?
Yes, police reporting.
Okay, well then we can't trust that, can we?
Well, yeah. So actually, the third of my thefts happened on the very last day of my insurance policy being active. So I'm quite certain they thought I was being fraudulent on that one. The last day of my insurance policy.
Suspiciously quick.
But it wasn't my fault. And each time I did upgrade my bike lock to make sure it wouldn't happen again. And each time they managed to get through my bike locks. The third, while I was buying my bike lock at the shop, I noticed that in the range of locks, one of them is called the Berliner. And I thought, is this a joke? Like, is this like made to be broken or made to be super resistant?
Right. It used to be like the hardest core one was like the New York City, right? And then they were like, oh well, no one, those bikes. We need something. We need the next step. Is the Berliner? Is it in the range? Where does it lie? Is it?
I didn't buy it, and my bike got stolen, so maybe I should have.
It doesn't inspire confidence.
Or maybe it's more like a regional theft techniques. Like the way you steal bikes in Berlin is different than New York City, and so it's specified to the. I don't know. I also wonder if part of what's happened is people in Berlin now own bikes nice enough to report if they get stolen and have purchased them from stores rather than flow marks. And so they actually have paperwork. I mean, that was the deal. Like before, it was kind of like give a bike, take a bike. Like you would buy a bike for $80, you'd ride it until someone stole it, and then you'd buy another bike from a flow mark without any paperwork. So you would never report that stolen. Like there was always like these stands out with the cops being like, hey, register your bike with the serial number. So like you can actually say it's yours in the event that it's stolen. And people will be like, yeah, I'd rather just not talk to you and buy a new bike when it gets stolen. But now people move here and they're like, oh, I've got this e-bike that's powered. It's made out of titanium, except for the parts that are diamonds. And I really need the police to protect my property as opposed to just being part of a magical exchange of old bikes that aren't great. And so I think that may have contributed more to the statistics than more thefts.
Another statistic straight out of today's paper, the number of people using the shared bike system Nextbike has reached a record high it's gone up 65%, the number of people using them in July as compared to last year. So that's a maybe is another factor that if you put these two statistics side by side, rising bike thefts and the rising number of people using these shared bike systems, because that's what I'm using now. I've given up buying bikes.
So are you accusing Nextbike of stealing your bikes in order to inflate their numbers?
It's working, so I'm only on the Next bikes now. I pay $10 a month. I can use any of them for half an hour for free. They're very hard to ride, but I kind of consider that a benefit. I feel like it's like my training bike. It's extra calories burnt every time I ride it because I have to push harder.
But there's two different. They're like the electric assist Next bikes and then the regular ones, right? I think I have a subscription to Next bike from when it was the only thing, and I just get an annual bill for like €1.39. I have no idea how to like log into the app. Like once a year I get this like thing I don't read and it's in German and I don't know how to cancel it and I'm like, I'm going to live with this forever. And it remind me of my early days in Berlin.
The other thing you might have remembered a few years ago, old Berliners, is we went through that boom where there were like 1 million shared bike companies here. They're all the O-Bike, the
Donkey Republic.
No, they're still around.
Okay.
But there was
and then they had the racks.
There was, I can't even remember the names of all of
these. They had all their own colors. It was like, I like that they had a system like the political parties here where like, you didn't remember the names. You're just like, I can ride the pink one, but then another one would come in and be pink and like, wait, is this a Voy or a whatever? And there was too many light green ones. And I think that they collapsed under the pressure of the color spectrum not being broad enough. Like if we could like perceive ultraviolet light, we would have more bike companies still.
What I think has happened here is that Nextbike is just the survivor. So all the other ones have come and gone, and their business models collapsed for various reasons. And if you just stick around long enough in this startup world and you're the only one standing, then you finally get the customers. But all you just have to do is hold your breath long enough to get through. I think it's the same with all these delivery companies. You know, you had the food delivery companies come and go, and it's the ones that hang around long enough are the ones who actually get what might have been the marginal amount of business that was there in the first place before all the companies piled in and tried to make money out of it.
Do you have the scooter figures?
No scooter figures.
Okay.
Do you think they separate those out?
Yes.
So this is my other theory with the bike theft reporting, based upon nothing, by the way, listeners, that these are actually the reports from all of these bike share companies saying like, oh, we had 20 bikes stolen, so they can write them down, right? Because those things are constantly getting like thrown in rivers and damaged and stuff. So I think they're just like calling the police and be like, so then they need to report all of those for their. That's probably the only way they can make money is to report those as stolen or whatever. So maybe that's also inflating it. I know. As one thing in terms of how media influences our culture, there was a show on Apple TV called I don't know, it's Seth Rogen in it, and did anyone watch this? Anyone know what I'm talking about? Platonic, and one of the main things that this character does is break e-scooters and throw them around. And since this show debuted, I have noticed a marked increase in the number of people or the number of bikes and scooters just thrown around violently. And so I'm just saying, like, you know, be careful the messages you send out into the entertainment industry, because it could lead to the damaging of e-scooters.
Unless you use them to build barricades in the revolution.
Yeah.
In the streets, yeah.
I think that's a good idea. And then they would also do that thing where they all start beeping. Or is this after the grid goes down?
I don't know.
Well,
I just think
powered.
if we have a revolution, we could use the scooters to make barricades against the police.
Another statistic, this time from BER. For those of you who've never heard of it, please check out How to Fuck Up an Airport, our spin-off series that is evergreen and really well produced. I had almost nothing to do with it. So this year in July, we had 2.2 million travelers coming through there. What do you guys think? Is that a lot? A little? Is this pre-pandemic, post-pandemic? What do you think? What 2.2 is that? What do you think?
Sounds like a lot to me.
It does sound 2.2
That's
sounds
half
like
the population of the city.
that is true. They didn't all come at once.
Okay.
You would have noticed that. I kind of felt like this year we're seeing like pre-pandemic levels of tourism just by my eyeballing of how many Americans that would be earballing. Walking around the streets being like, darn, that's whatever they sound like. I can't do an impression of an American. But 2.2 does not get us back to the 2019 July figures of 3.4 million.
Wow.
So we're still below pre-pandemic. Berlin is not yet back.
Or people are just arriving here not via the airport. We could be seeing significant increase in car and train travel, but I highly doubt that.
Yeah.
Can I tell you what I think will not work to bring more tourists to Berlin? If you're a podcast listener, as I assume you are, and you listen to this and other podcasts, you probably get those automated ads that come on at the start of your podcast. You don't get them much on our show because we don't have enough listeners to qualify for the programs by which they put them stingers.
We do have enough listeners to qualify for.
We've turned them off actually because we don't like them.
We chose not to do dynamically inserted advertising.
That's what it's called, and that's why you hear sometimes the same ad across multiple podcasts, and they're 30 seconds long, and I always skip them. But sometimes I forget to skip them. And lately, there's a horrible one where there's like a jingle of people singing about why you should come to Berlin in German.
What?
Yeah, it's awful. It's like this little Berlin, Berlin, come to Berlin, Berlin. Like what? Who made this? Of all the creatives in the city, you hired like these jingle writers who sound like they're doing like a McDonald's McFlurry ad.
Right.
And do you think this is going to get people to come here?
What happens is you have executives administrators who have been working in radio for like 40 years. Yeah. They're like, this is what an ad is. This is how we make them. Oh, you have an audio format. We will stick this in there and it will satisfy my desire to make a thing happen and spend the money so that I can check off the box.
Well, I'm at least there's a couple of backup singers who keep getting hired for these jingly things that sound terrible. But I was just shocked that was the best they could come up with to represent our city to the outside world. Well, it was in German, so I assume they're trying to get more German tourists.
Right. Maybe it actually plays well in Dusseldorf.
Right.
They're like, oh, Berlin, that sounds lovely. I'd heard it was just full of punk rockers. Perhaps it also has like lively jingle type people.
Fighting in the swimming pools.
Yeah,
that's what they think, don't they?
Is that?
Let's talk about that. Yeah. Next news point down. Give us.
That's why I did that for you.
Wait,
Thank you.
That was just for you.
Summer in Berlin means I go to the pool a lot. I go mostly to Kreuzberg, Sommerbad, also to Columbiabad. But lately, Columbiabad has been tainted by some terrible media coverage. It's been called the Problem Bad, the Chaos Bad, all because
they didn't say shitstorm.
They didn't this time. They reserved that one for later on. So the reason is because there was a little bit of a rumble in the pool between some kids. Some security guards tried to break up a bit of a fight there, and this happens every single summer that I can remember that I've ever been in Berlin. That a couple of hyped up kids with a little bit too much testosterone push each other around. Security guard comes over, fists fly. End of story. However, this incident has been treated like some kind of national crisis. It has been covered right across Germany as if it is the end of society in Berlin. It's representative of some kind of degenerate strain of poor integration. Of course, these kids, we assume from all the media coverage that they have Migrationshintergrund from all the subtext in which they're being talked about. I think this is a total overblown hype, and I actually find it a bit racist the way it's been dealt with, to be honest. I actually know somebody who was at the pool the day that this happened, and she said there was a little bit of a scuffle. Some kids got kicked out, but then the whole pool got raided by police. Like dozens of cops, hundreds of cops went in there, pulled everybody out, and then the pool shut down for a week because the staff kind of went on strike. And then when they started again, the city government came back in with this new rule saying that everybody who goes to Sommerbads has to present their ID to get in. which I didn't understand as a policy because I don't really understand what the point of that was meant to be. You show your ID to get in. What is this supposed to be controlling? The fact that you have an ID? Is it meant to be marginalizing somebody who doesn't have an identification? Is it meant to be saying that we think that these people are undocumented migrants and therefore, like, what was the message they were trying to send with that? I really couldn't understand. Also, I couldn't understand the effectiveness of that. Just by showing your ID at the door doesn't stop anything. They weren't recording the ID, so it's not like they had a extra list of people who they could prosecute in the event that something had gone bad. They were just making you show the ID as some kind of control, and it really would seem to me like just empty reactionism by somebody in charge to show, hey, we have to do something, let's pretend that there's some kind of more control. But the only result of it that I could see was that some little old lady in front of me at the pool got turned away because she didn't have her ID with her at the day. And I was like, well, okay, good work.
Yeah, I don't carry my ID to the pool.
You've just pissed off your core, voter, the little old lady from Berlin. She's not going to vote for you after this.
Well, she would assume it's not the government's fault that the ID requirement there. It's her neighbors who also brought out the bottles on Sunday.
Right.
I think you're being very presumptuous about this hypothetical little old lady. You don't know. Maybe she was really angry and a leftist.
You're right.
But Dan, you went to a pool recently.
Yeah. No, I actually want to say one more thing on this thing because part of what happened, why this became such a big story, is nothing happens in this country in July. Yes. And the newspapers got to keep publishing. And as someone who does a regular podcast, I see how quickly we're fucking talking about it too all of a sudden, from our angle, but we don't have a lot of other stuff. And the really crazy thing about it is this does happen all the time. What doesn't happen all the time is the razzia, the crazy overreaction of the cops, which is the real story here. That what could possibly have justified or prompted that reaction? Right. There is no other than to perhaps create the news story.
Or political pressure from a new government that needs to look like it's in power.
Yes.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But the really suspicious and alarming thing is you guys have handled this situation thousands of times without this response.
Yeah.
And I mean, I wasn't someone had a bomb when these teenagers were fighting or whatever. There's been nothing though that I saw, and I don't read a ton, that could explain that to me. And that's the unanswered question.
The other half of this is that I don't think this would have happened had this been a bunch of white kids fighting in pools, because white kids fight in pools too all the time, particularly up in a pool in Pankow, where I've also been, and there have also been fights up there with testosterone-fueled white kids, that doesn't cause a national outrage. No. And even more insidious now, we're hearing that at the same pool in Pankow, there's a neo-Nazi element that's emerging to come out and try and scare off the kids with Migrationshintergrund. Dan, what do you got in your hand there?
A short article from the paper. It's not funny. It was just the transition. So basically, cops showed up on the 1st of July due to 4 members of a right extreme scene that were wearing T-shirts declaring that. The Dritte National Revolutionäre Jugend.
You cover neo-Nazi movements a lot. Have you heard of this one, Ben?
I thought it was the Dritte Weg. Was it
Dritte
not
Weg?
the Dritte Weg?
The Dritte Weg, that's it.
Oh, no, there's a different one.
It's a youth movement of the Dritte Weg.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, the Dritte Weg is a national neo-Nazi group.
This is their
youth wing
version.
They came out and stood outside the pool with a banner saying something like, go and stab yourself in the Mediterranean instead. Go back to where you came from.
And so then, a few police came up and got them away and did not shut down the pool, or
didn't shut down the pool, didn't cause a national media outrage.
This is a very small article.
Yeah, there's bigger ones.
It's one paragraph.
Well, to be fair, I was reading the BayZ. That was, and it was. I couldn't. I only read the small ones.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a so.
So do I.
I had an encounter with someone I assumed to be a Nazi at Prinsenbad at Kreuzberg, Sommerbad. I was there with my kids and their friends and things, and I look up in the pool and there's a dude with just a giant swastika tattoo on his rib cage, which was shocking. And one of these things where where you're looking around, and you're like, can I be the only person seeing this? And then also, what do I do now? I had I've got these two. I can't like go fight them right then or whatever. Like I was keeping 2 kids from drowning, and like one of them wasn't mine, so I really like. That's like a big deal.
It's all right if it's your own one that drowns. Fine,
Well,
all
or like I could have been
enough.
like just like taking that one and like I don't know, thrown him into the shallow. I don't know, like, and so I've got to like, and I also don't want to be like, hey kids, there's a Nazi, and I have to do something about it. Like I want them to just enjoy their childhood because I feel like part of what he's doing there is trying to make sure they can't, and or like it felt like someone literally testing the waters. And there's like, within the history of Kreuzberg, a time when like it was very dangerous to walk around with a swastika tattoo. And now and again, like I didn't meet this person and interview him. He may have been like a poorly informed Buddhist or someone like, I don't know, maybe like, it was some sort of subtly Nazi. I don't, like, let me just
Was he
say,
fat and bald?
he was not fat and bald. He was relatively thin. But he was in the pool, like sort of like trying to cover up his side where it was. And then and all I could do in response was just like stare at him and watch. And he left, I think. I tried to find him later, but I also was like, okay, what do I do? Like, I'm like looking around the pool, like, who are my allies here? I was like, oh, like, and that just led to my own racism, where I'm like evaluating who's on my team or whatever. I did see a guy like wearing an Antifa like T-shirt, but I felt like that was not. I feel like that would be like seeing someone in a Metallica T-shirt and like being like, "Can you play Enter Sandman?" I feel like he was probably more of a fan than like an active member. And like I went to someone and a German friend. They were like, "You should call the police because it is illegal to display that symbol." And I was like, I don't think that's gonna work at this point. And so I don't know, maybe this is just like a call to be like, where's the secret Telegram channel where I like call in the
Antifa.
the Antifa who will do things.
You probably could have just gone and talked to the staff. They probably would have done something.
I agree, but like also they're watching the same pool as I am. I'm my hope, because the guy, like, I couldn't find him, is that's what happened. That someone did take care of that. But you're also just looking at these security guards and you're like, oh no, like which one of them is cool?
Yeah. Well, it is disturbing that a neo-Nazi would feel empowered to be able to go to a pool in Kreuzberg and show off their tattoo at this stage, yes.
And I think this is like one of the really heinous effects of gentrification, right? If you start pricing out the people who are willing to like fight Nazis, and you're bringing in people like me with kids they're trying to keep from drowning, and like, I don't know if, or whatever, if you've got a startup job and you don't want to get arrested for fighting a Nazi, and lose your visa, then you're just not that helpful in these situations. So this is another reason why we have to control the rent and protect the squats and keep vigilantism alive in Kreuzberg. I don't know. Nope.
Perfect.
No one in the audience agrees with me at this point. Or I just went on. They were like, no, we got it from the beginning. You didn't have to explain it.
Radio spät auf. Berlin News in English.
It's now 100 days since we've had a new mayor in Berlin. The CDU's Kai Wegner has been our mayor since the results of the re-election held earlier this year. He formed a coalition with the SPD. So for the last 100 days, Berlin has been conservative. And how's it going? Well, the local newspapers have put out a little 100 days of Kai Wegner, a little summary of all the different things that he has done or hasn't done. So let's go through a few of them, hey?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Can we talk about I think the bike paths is the big one, isn't it?
The bike paths was the big one. The transport senator came out saying that she didn't think there should be bike paths that interfere with car traffic. Kai Wegner came out saying that he didn't think bike paths should slow down the cars. And one of the statements made by the transport minister was, people have other things to worry about than bicycles right of way and gender neutral speech or gender correct speech. So she like compiled these two things together into one one monster dog whistle.
So wasn't one of the first decisions they made was to cancel bike paths?
So one of the first things that they did was to order a review of all the existing bike paths to make sure that they weren't going to interfere with car traffic.
Oh my God!
because that was their problem. They didn't.
What does that mean?
You can't slow down a car if you're going to have a bike path installed. Also, the Transport Secretary said she didn't want a bike path to take away from a car space, so she would rather have parking spaces than bike paths.
So.
Now, After that was early June. There was a huge outcry. Has been, I don't know if you've seen them riding around, lots of bicycle demonstrations organized by different groups. The ADFC, the Bicycle Lobby, is one. Another one is called Respect Cyclists. It's a group that's come up in the last few months to organize these demos like a couple of times a week, riding around different neighborhoods, specifically at rush hour. They really want to shut down the traffic to show, hey, if you don't give us bike paths, we'll just ride where your cars think they should go instead and see how you like that. So the bicycle scene has been really active in pushing back against this. Also, it was pointed out to the city government that if you cancel these bike paths, you'll still have to pay for them because a lot of them had been planned and budgeted and paid for, and the contractors who were meant to install the bollards and paint the stripes had already been contracted, and just cancelling it, you'd still have to pay out those contracts even if they didn't do the work. The federal government had also committed money to building these bike paths, and if the city government had cancelled them, they would lose that funding. That money would just go nowhere. So there was this review period in June, and at the end of the review period, the transport senator came back and said, oh, well, actually, we've reviewed 19 of them, and 16 of them are fine. We can give you 16 of them, but we're going to take 3 of them away. So there's 3 bike paths that will not happen. One of them is going to be in Neukölln. Another one will be up in Pankow, and another one in Mariendorf that are being cancelled. The other ones are going ahead. And in fact, some major ones are still going ahead. There's going to be one, for example, put down Hermannstrasse, which is wonderful because that is a horrible road to ride down until you get down to Hermannplatz. And a few other big streets. Schönhauser Allee, that's a horrible path to ride at the moment. You're sort of squeezed onto the pavement and everyone's fighting against each other. They're finally going to get a dedicated bike lane. So it's a bit strange because we've had this government that started out being super anti-bike, and then they did this review, and then they've come back and kind of said, oh, actually, just continue on with what was happening before. What I think's happened here is that this government won power by being pro-motorist, and they have to reward their base. So they won all these votes in the outer ring, around the outside the ring. You can see, you look at the electoral map, it is just like, it's like black, which is the color of the CDU. So they have to reward their motorists by pretending to be tough on bikes. So they come out with this rhetoric saying, we hate bikes, we're going to review all the bike lanes. But in the end, they sort of actually just let most of them go through. So I think this is more signaling than substance. And I think that's what we've seen a lot from this new government so far, is that they're willing to say things that make us, make anyone who's like lefty progressive feel a bit worried. But in the end, they're kind of just continuing on with a slightly similar program to what any local government has had.
We could say that. Go ahead.
But there is one thing that I think is really worrying.
Go ahead.
That I just read in your paper here. It says that preventive detention is going to be extended from 48 hours to 5 days.
What is preventative detention, Ben?
That's when you think someone might commit a crime because, stick themselves onto a road, and you can just put them in prison.
So this is particularly aimed at the climate activists who are blocking the roads.
Yes.
Which has become another big theme.
5 days? With not even a crime has been committed, so just a thought crime. He might do something. That's terrible.
That's pretty disturbing.
Yeah.
Also, because the people
they have to change the law,
and the poor precogs just stuck in those baths, that's
sort of
who's going to protect them?
Yeah. Who thinks of the
climate activists have become public hate figure number one for all the media and pretty much for all the politicians as well. Even the Chancellor Olaf Scholz has called them völlig beklopft, which means completely idiotic. This is his view of the people blocking traffic. And the local government here has tried to do a few things to speed up the process of prosecuting people. So one of the things they've done is they've actually told the courts that you have to prioritize prosecuting these climate activists over all of the cases. You have to do it faster.
Yeah.
So these cases are getting to court. But what's happening actually, and I think this is a testament to at least the strength of the justice system, is the judges are saying, no, we're not going to do this. Just because you as politicians think it's expedient to try and prosecute these people in a different way, that's not the purpose of justice or the courts. We're not here to specifically prosecute individuals who you don't like. We're here to do our job like normal, and we'll just prosecute them in their turn as fast as we will prosecute anybody else. So there's been a series of cases where the court has actually thrown out cases brought by the prosecutors against climate activists and said, you don't have enough evidence. We're not going to proceed.
Yeah.
So, as someone who supports these kids doing these climate activism, I'm very happy to see, or not, they're not kids, they're people of all ages. I'm happy to see that the courts at least are pushing back and say, just because you bring them to us and tell us to prosecute them, we're not going to do anything different to any other case.
Yeah, but at the same, so we've been covering Extinction Rebellion since they first appeared. Like, we had an interview years ago with someone who was not a child at all. And, he was presenting this idea of the importance of being arrested, of the importance of being prosecuted, the importance of being thrown in jail. And that was like really key to how he was talking about this, what he felt was like a new strategy for dealing with this. And so to some effect, and you do see headlines when people do get prison sentences, and that is like an important part of their message. So could it not also hurt their campaign to not be prosecuted, to not go to court? Like, that's part of how they get their message heard.
I assume people are happy to not go to prison.
I don't know. I mean, like, I thought that was part of what you sign up for.
So the new government wants to make it easier for these people to get arrested. Let's see if the courts actually support that new government's policy. Some other things that this new government has done. Well, this one's interesting. So they have done some good things. As much as I've been skeptical about what the CDU government might do, they're basically continuing a lot of programs that had already been started, and they haven't killed them. So that, at least, they haven't killed everything good. And one of the things that they haven't killed and are continuing is that did you know that you can get a rebate to put a solar panel on your balcony and create your own energy, even as a renter? They give 500 euros for people to put little, what they call Balkonkraftwerke, balcony power stations. So you can find a company that will put a solar panel system on your balcony. It will generate power. You'll get a rebate from the government. Then you'll generate enough power to maybe charge a couple of laptops and sell whatever you don't use back to the grid. And Ben, you actually got an offer to install one of these, or you saw an offer from a friend of yours.
Yeah, someone sent me a thing from a company where it just said you can fill in this form and you can pay for it yourself, and it would be like 670 odd euros, or you can get the government grant, which is 500 euros, so it would only cost about 170 euros to do it. You need a minimum size of 1.80 meter balcony, so it's quite big. It's like it's sort of like
it's about the size of us three sitting here next to each other.
And apparently it's really easy. You just plug it in. So if you've got an outdoor socket, you plug it in, and then it feeds energy into your flat.
I'm going to look into this, and it only with the bonus, it only costs you $170.
Yeah,
which is recoupable.
Yeah,
through it. This as disappointing as many leftists found Obama. A similar policy under him, like, led to a lot in certain states in America, like a lot of solar panels getting installed, a lot of people generating power instead of sucking it out, and like,
good.
There's precedence for this type of policy working. Go ahead.
Okay, so the balance of the first couple of months of the new government is they talk a tough game against the people they don't like. They make a lot of noise, bashing cyclists and bringing in ID checks at the pool. But substantially, not a huge amount has yet changed, and maybe they're talking their bark is worse than their bite. But we still have yet to see, because it's only been a couple of months.
Don't you want to talk about Neukölln? About the defunding Neukölln?
Oh, right. Yeah, so that was the other news for the last few months.
Yeah.
There was a period where the Neukölln city government made a big announcement that they were going to cut their budget.
Yeah. And they calculated that they were going to have to cut so and so many playgrounds and all these public amenities and the Christmas market on Richardplatz, I think. The really fancy Christmas market that everyone loves. And they said, we're going to have to cancel that because the government isn't giving us enough money.
Neukölln played this very, very well. Like, a budget was released, and they put out this simple press release that was just like, here's what's happening.
Yeah.
And that just got, and it was they had the right, like, bullet points for each newspaper. Right, so you could see in, like, tabloids where they were like, "No Christmas market, like, government hates Santa Claus," and then they were like, for the lefties I follow on social media, they were like, well, they're going to stop fixing schools and playgrounds and just ruin people's lives. And it was like, no blame for the Neukölln government whatsoever. Just the tactic there was fantastic.
So the story behind this is the Neukölln local government gets its budget from the state government, most of it, and it can only spend what it's given. So the Neukölln city government or local government saw the budget that was being handed down to it by the state government, the CDU, the Kai Wegner's government, and said, you've cut our budget, therefore we have to cut ours, and here's what we're going to cut. So they were essentially trying to play the blame upwards and say the city-state government are the ones who are taking away Christmas, the city-state government are the ones who are cutting our budget, and therefore we have to enact these cuts on you citizens. After that happened, the state government came back and said, oh, well, hang on a minute. Well, we've just found a bit of extra money for all of you. So they actually did revise the budgets of the local governments, gave them some extra money so that they didn't have to do these intensive cuts. Although we haven't yet seen what on that list has survived. So Christmas might still be cancelled. I'm not sure yet, actually, if they've gone back and said, oh, okay, we'll fix the playgrounds in the end.
But to be fair, the Rixdorf market just isn't good anymore anyway.
Ooh. Haven't been for a while.
It's just so crowded, and you can't get. I don't do it.
You liked it when it was still cool.
No, I'm just saying, like, maybe what it needs more fun. It needs to get bigger or something.
Okay.
Maybe it needs
Longer.
a creative pause.
It's like one weekend, it's like maybe they need to stretch it out. There's a solution there.
Could be the best thing to happen to it.
I'm just backtracking as fast as I can. I've like of all the things I've said on this podcast, I was like, oh, that got me canceled. I think it's really important to note, like, where we're drawing this distinction between the state and government, and then these the borough governments, that you have to look at this map of how people are voting, right? Because it's not like we have evenly distributed the election of, like, our state officials. It's a bullseye. It's just there is a ring of people voting one way on the outer ring and another way on the inside. I don't mean literally the ring. I mean, like,
it is literally the ring.
It is, well, okay, but if you have to see this, maybe I'll post it in the show notes. But, like, you see this and you just see, oh, there is. It looks just like a bullseye.
Conservative vote is
or
outside.
A tick bite, and there's just this external force ruling this inner city. And so when you've got people determining budgets for things that have nothing to do with their life, this is like, it doesn't relate even. They're living in a different place.
Yeah.
And I think to some extent, even the choices they're making are right for where they live. Like, some of those places are not served well by public transportation, and cars are more necessary, right? Like, there are, I'm not calling for more cars, but I'm saying they live in places where the infrastructure doesn't serve them without cars. So, like, do we have to get to a point where we say, like, we can't continue this process of having a shared
cessationist talk. You want Kreuzberg to declare independence.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I come from a country where, like, people's votes don't count equally because they were trying to balance this type of situation. And so, like, there has to be a way, and whether that means that, you have certain rights as a citizen regardless, that's the other way to balance it, is to say, like, no matter where you live, have a school that isn't full of rats. Like, that's the only way to balance being ruled by this, I don't know, barricade of suburban conservatives.
Shall we talk about Ben's movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do a stinger and talk about Ben's movie.
Ben Knight.
Hello.
I watched your film last night. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Thanks.
I interrogated you afterwards.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask you the tough questions now, but
Okay.
Can you tell us a little bit about the film that you screened last night?
Yeah, so this was about the fourth screening. We just finished it this year. It's called We're All Going to Die, which puts a few people off, I think. I mean, I don't know.
It's a great title.
I slightly regret the title, but that's what it's called now.
Were there options that you considered?
No. I was gonna make it a bit more ambiguous. It's like something like Going to Die.
Or We're All Gonna Die, exclamation point, question mark?
Yeah.
We're all gonna die?
Something like that, yeah.
No, I love the title. I love
Anyway.
it.
And it is basically an exploration of people who are preparing for social and or ecological collapse. And it involves me meeting all these people. I go to America, I go to Norway, Mexico, the UK, and I meet a man in Cologne, a prepper in Cologne as well. And yeah, I just sort of it took me about 4 years to do, so it's a lot of work has gone into it, and I'm quite pleased with it, with the way it's come out. And the screenings so far have been quite successful.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been okay.
I
And it kind of touches on a lot of things. It's quite a psychological film. It becomes quite emotional at certain points, and yeah, I don't know. It's been doing. It's okay.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the film for me,
I'm still waiting for money. I'm still waiting for someone to pay me for it. So,
next, you can get paid for your next film. Probably.
Okay.
The underpinning of the film is really not so much about like how do you prepare for the apocalypse by like what are you going to assemble. Although you interview people about that, it's really about how you deal emotionally with the fact that it's coming. And to me, that's sort of like, because some people's perspective on that is to hoard this or store that, and others are like, well, just come to terms with it because we're all going to die. And it's, we sort of watch you try on these different hats.
Yeah. So yeah, that was the essential thing. I like, because some of the people I interview are quite extreme in their views. So there are some like scientists and what's called the collapse community. That is a phrase that people use, and there are people in it who think that we have like 5 years left of this society, or 10 years left of this society. And the question isn't whether they're right or wrong, but the question is, what do you do if you really think that? If you really think that we've only got like 2 years or 3 years left of Western civilization, or of the developed world, how do you react? What do you do with your life? And that is like, and I basically asked different people that, and myself that too.
But interestingly, your general, I mean, I don't want to spoil the movie, but you come up with a bit of a philosophical take on it all, and it's. You haven't changed your life dramatically as a result, so you have obviously adopted the philosophy that you can't do much, so you might as well just sit back and enjoy the ride.
That was not my takeaway.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Like you could say that, but I think the idea is that so you're transplanting your own crisis onto the crisis of the planet. So there is a sense that whatever you do is right for what you feel like you should do. Like, I think there's a guy in the film who says you do what you love, and I think, and if what you love to do is to go, it's totally legitimate to protest and stick yourself on the street, and yet for some people that isn't enough. So like there's a group in America called the Good Grief Network who I interview. And they are helping activists who are feeling a sense of despair. They're feeling like real despair about, I'm doing all this stuff and it's not helping, and I feel I'm getting properly depressed about it. And there are ways of working through that helps you. So it's true that I don't think the idea is it should be like total fatalism. You just accept it, but at the same time, you've got to have look after yourself while you're doing it.
So in the Q&A afterwards, one of the questions that came was, you live in Kreuzberg.
Yeah.
What can people in Kreuzberg do to prepare for an apocalypse? Are there any solutions that we could come up with? And now, to me, this question I thought was strange because your whole film was basically saying, well, there isn't really much you can do practically because if the shit hits the fan, which is a common phrase they use, then we've got like a couple of days of energy, power, and water, and then we're all screwed. Well, so and then unless you've got a bolt hole to escape to, which not all of us do, like there isn't anything you can do practically. Is basically what your message was, and yet people still want to hear from you. What can I do practically to get ready for it?
There was, but Joel, there were some practical plans, and
Yeah, I mean, the point is, it's up to you. You can either prepare practically, and you can do things. It's true if you live in any major city, urban center, and you are worried that there's going to be a blackout or a food shortage. caused by climate change, which is some people say is a real possibility. And if you really, really think that is a real problem, then you should start storing food, and you should find a place to go into the country or a community to join in the countryside.
Or a solar panel for your balcony.
That might.
Yeah,
it would probably definitely help. Actually, the guy Rainer, the prepper that I interview, he does have a solar power. In fact, his whole flat is solar powered, even though he really hates the Green Party. But for different reasons.
You haven't. You said this last night. You have started putting a little bit extra food in your pantry.
Yeah, first aid kit.
And a first aid kit.
Yeah.
But for example, you came here to our festival, and this was the first time you had put up a tent. So after making a movie for 4 years about prepping, you still hadn't learned how to put up a tent. You can't be that worried.
In my defense, I went on a survival weekend in which we were not allowed tents. We only had a piece of tarpaulin.
Oh, a tent is too easy, is it?
Yeah, and we each got a piece of tarpaulin on our survival weekend and a bit of string, and we had to build our own shelter.
Yeah.
So
also, modern tents are really easy to put up, Joel. This isn't the 80s.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say that I would necessarily know how to build it. I mean, I only did the basic course. I didn't do the full. Week,
I think over the course of a couple nights, you'd work out how to tie the string and where to put the tarp. I think
it's a fast learning curve when you really need to do it.
Sorry, Joel.
Did any of our audience members watch the movie, and do any of you have questions for Ben? No.
No.
Right.
Some of them did watch it.
If you want to watch the film, can I plug it?
Yeah.
Of course.
Akud, August the 30th, we're doing another screening in Mitte at 8 p.m. And that will be interesting because we're going to have a spokesperson from XR, from Extinction Rebellion, and a spokesperson from Psychologists for Future. And we're going to do a panel discussion afterwards about the film. And that will be really good, hosted by the Disruption Network Lab. If you know them, you go on the website. And we have a website for the film called We're All Going to Die film.com. And check it out. And I've got the screenings listed there.
I think an important message of the film that I think makes it really worth watching is that there's a lot of very entertaining people that you can meet along the way to figuring out how to deal with the anxiety of Earth's destruction and the looming, what's the word, the opposite, the despair, and that within all of that despair, you can come out with a film that's very entertaining.
I hope so. Yeah.
I was the part I was most thrilled about was the scene in your kitchen, Ben.
Oh my God, guys! If anything, Radio Spakoff listeners, wow. I've never been so excited to see a mug on a big screen before.
A Radio Spakoff mug front and center on your kitchen table.
Product placement.
You can only read Rod and Spay, but that at that moment, although there was a continuity error where within that scene the mug disappears from in front of your brother, and I was like, well, now I've got, this is going to be my question for the Q&A. Why did the mug disappear halfway through the conversation? It might have just been cropped out. I'm not sure.
I got to say this is a credit to you, Dan, because the mugs were your idea as a product placement. You were giving them away to everybody you could, and finally won it up on screen just by eventually it worked. It was a brilliant strategy.
Yeah, and I appreciate that I have now a film credit as mug supplier. I'm in between a Key Grip and a Best Boy, but it's there. It's on my IMDb page now.
I did that on purpose, and I'm delighted to support this podcast.
I at first I was like, it's just an accident, but there was also the crazy bastard hot sauce poster. I was like,
I know.
He's got all the brands. It's like a real, whoever did the set deck here gave it a real sense of time and place.
Berlin, this is everybody in Berlin that we know has got a bit of a plug in there.
Yeah, it was weird. I do have to say the fact that Mobile Kino wasn't represented was very disappointing, and I assume that you've had some fallout.
Well, I don't know. Is there a T-shirt? In the next film, I'll wear a Mobile Kino T-shirt.
Right. Or I think
I'll
that's
put that on the film.
That's on record now.
Have you got another burning topic in you that you want to make a film about?
Well, I was thinking about making a film. I shouldn't say this on live because someone might nick my idea.
No one steals ideas. They'll never do them as good as you.
I mean, it's not really fully formed anyway, but I'd quite like to do something about the future of food. Eating insects and worms and algae and growing meat in a in a petri dish, all that kind of stuff.
I want to eat all of those things. No,
I'm
seriously.
interested in to see, like, you know,
Just make them cheap enough and put them on my supermarket shelf. I'll buy them.
Yeah, how the world will change, you know, when we have different food.
Insect burgers, no problem.
Yeah.
Insect chips.
Okay. Yeah, of course it is.
It was just about the previous film, which based upon what like all the research you did, etc., doing it, did it make your outlook a bit more kind of like pessimistic overall about the way, because you might have already had your initial ideas about, you know, how you think the world's going to go in like 100 years, etc. And then the other one is
100. You are a very hopeful person.
I like to try and maintain a little bit of optimism still, but also my other thing is because like recently I've been having kind of existential thoughts about like whether I would like to have children. So like also in terms of the human race, like, you know, continuing to do that, do you think this is a good idea or not? I used to always think I wanted kids, and now I'm a bit more unsure about it.
Do you have anyone to create a child with?
No, I'm also literally single, so it's not even an option right now. But
all right, no, it's a good question.
In case I ever met someone.
I hope my answer isn't going to decide for you. Like I said, I'm not going to tell you whether or not you should have children. But no, I think that I have become, like, definitely through doing the film, I've become more optimistic. I should say, like, I feel a little. I don't think we are really all going to die. Oh shit! This spoils the film. I don't think we are all going to die, but and I do feel like the fear that we all feel is real and rational. It's okay to be scared of the future because a lot of people are, and a lot of people are already experiencing catastrophes around the world every day, you know, like, and that, so I think the fear is definitely rational and valid. But at the same time, I think that it's okay to have kids. I don't think that's like, I think partly because, you know, the human race has gone through many terrible things in its life, and somehow some people have all survived. You know,
I think I'm just going to jump in here because I've had to go through this process. Like I have kids, and I live in the same world as you do, and I think and I feel like there are people who are very strongly like anti-natalism and would, you know, discourage anyone from trying to have children now for probably reasons that you're considering, and not to discredit their thoughts on that. I mean, they could be right, but if they are right, then that's genocide, right? That's what they're proposing, is to end the human race. And I don't think that that is an acceptable choice, even if it is pragmatic, because it's also stopping people who want to have kids from doing it. And I think it's also really important, and this is maybe a little bit influenced by the film that I watched last night, that there are people outside of probably your immediate circles or your family history who have gone through genocides and who have gone through horrors far worse than you're going to experience in the next 10 years and still had kids, and like brought them into worlds that were full of people just trying to murder them everywhere they went, where 80% of their population dies, 90, whatever, and they kept going. And like maybe they didn't know how birth control, I mean, whatever. I don't mean to be flippant now, but it's just my habit. But I just think that like it is.
You're saying is have kids if you want to have kids.
I'm saying it's. I think it takes to.
But that's also Ben's message too, is that, or from the film, is that if you know we can't really have a great influence at this point, so do what you were going to do anyway, and don't let the thought of impending doom stop you, right?
Yeah, but also be realistic about what is going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. Fair enough.
I mean, there are Americans who, before they like conceive a child, start a bank account so they can save for college, right? And like that's like, don't be that country. Like live in Germany where that would be free because you want people to have educations, but also like you could also just buy a first aid kit or like teach your kid how to make a fire or whatever, or breathe air that's not have any oxygen in it. I don't know. So I think that like you can like raise. I don't know. Didn't you read The Road? It's fine. You got to keep the fire alive. By the way, if you haven't read The Road, don't do it. It's the worst thing that ever happened to me. It's a great book. It's very well written. Carmen McCarthy's amazing, but Jesus, there's parts of that I can't get out of my head.
No, it's true. Yeah.
Ben, one more time, could you say the website and the name of the film?
Oh yeah, we're all going to die film.com.
Way to get the URL for that. Wow. And well, there's a screening coming up at Akud. We'll have that in the show notes.
Yeah.
And there'll be future screenings as well. Go see the movie. It is fantastic.
Yeah.
And it'll help you to deal.
Radio Spätkau.
I've got a couple other little things. There is a insect counters are being sought. If you'd like to go out and help find out how many bees and other little things there are crawling around Berlin. NABU is calling for people to do this on the 13th of August. That's the day after my birthday, in case anyone, wants to celebrate my birthday by counting bugs. It sounds fun, and it takes a lot of people. It's similar to the bird counts that are done around the world, and it helps us to know what's going on. I believe there's 2 dates coming up, but it would be great to have people go out and help with that. And I think it's like one of those things like, what can I do? Well, you can go count beetles and
that's great.
bees.
Yeah,
Doesn't sound very hard, does it?
I don't know. We'll put it in the show notes.
NABU. It's like a natural.
Naturschutzband. NABU,
I love
and
that.
you can type in Insektsala, and I'll
Citizen
add a link as
scientists.
well.
I love that stuff. It's really
Yeah,
cool.
and maybe you'll meet other people who like counting bugs, and then you can settle down and have kids, and then they can grow up in a barren wasteland, fighting off cyborgs who are after their petrol.
I hadn't seen many wasps this summer until I came out here, and this is where they all are apparently, eating my getting into my sweet Aperol spritz for the weekend. Anyone else have their Aperol spritz invaded by a wasp? But yeah, in the city, I hadn't seen so many wasps this summer.
It's a low wasp year for
yeah,
sure.
low wasps.
The mosquitoes are doing fine though.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
I noticed last night.
Yeah. Oh, did you get bitten?
Well, yeah.
Oh,
Didn't we all?
I don't think I did.
You didn't.
No, I sprayed some
Okay.
toxin on my body.
Oh, that'll help the count. Don't do that on the insect counting day. I'm quite sure they said don't come spraying yourself with clouds of DDT.
They didn't mention whether or not they'd be counting mosquitoes, so I'm not sure that's.
Maybe you're just supposed to stand there naked and then you count how many bites you've had, and then you.
Oh, right. That would be a good way to measure that population. But people like
Someone else.
mosquitoes are not attracted evenly to all people, so
Okay.
you'd have to also do a control.
Yeah.
Of how many times you got bitten and other you'd have to stand there for I guess a week and then do
You're
that.
not selling it to me.
Okay, Joel.
I think we're done.
I
Okay.
think we're done.
Yeah.
I'm having so much fun. I don't ever want to stop. That's fantastic. Is there anything we want to announce coming up? All right.
This has been the highlight of my summer. I can't see beyond it.
It has, yeah.
This is all I look forward to all year, and even while it's happening, I still can't imagine anything better than being out in the nature, even when it's raining. It's beautiful out here.
This weekend is very special. And
Thank you very much to Joshua and Fernando from Mobile Kino for putting on every year a fantastic festival, Lakeside Film Fest. If you've been listening to this podcast for all these years and still haven't come, what are you doing? You know it's the best thing in the world and the best thing that ever happens anywhere near Berlin, and you've got to come here. Even in the rain, it's nice.
Yeah. And it's fun, and there's like it's a real family atmosphere. Not that I don't mean like a bunch of kids running around.
Also, though,
there's a few,
Yeah.
and but it's also like you get to know people.
Yeah.
You sit and watch a film with them. It's different than a festival where you're just high, listening to techno. I mean, I don't know. I've never been to one of those. What am I talking about? This is.
It was funny actually last night because we had to clear the dance floor of all the people celebrating life to show my film, which is about celebrating. All these people were dancing to techno until 9 o'clock, and they were so happy, and I felt really bad. Like, everyone's got to go now, so we can show my film about how they're all going to die.
I think we struck a nice balance.
Okay.
I'm going to finish by doing my plugs as usual. If we had a lot of news from Pankow today, if you'd like to come out and see some stand-up comedy every Tuesday night at Two Fellas Brewery, we've got Slingshot Comedy. I've got an amazing lineup of comedians through the next few months. Also, if you're interested in podcasts, if you have your own podcast, if you'd like to have your own, check out Podfest Berlin. We're announcing a lot of our dates, a lot of our attendees and events that are coming up in October. Our annual festival is October 14th and 15th. There'll be a ton of live recordings and workshops and other things, film screenings and lots of fun. There's already tickets on sale for 2 of the podcast tapings. We've got the Bad Gays podcast, which is amazing. If you haven't already listened to it or read their book, fantastic podcast. And Happy Potter, which is a very, very nice Harry Potter podcast. Oh, that one's off Deutsch. But, I think all the names of the characters are still in English. And there'll be plenty more announcements coming up on that. And if you would like to get involved, just drop me a message because we are assembling our team for this year. Radio Spakehoff will be back next month with another episode, and then also returning in October for a live recording at the festival. Ben, Joel, it's been wonderful, and thank you to our audience here.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Bye.